Daniel knew how to build beautiful homes for other people. He could look at empty land and imagine walls, windows, rooms, and roofs where families would gather. For years, he took pride in his work. But there was one home he never had time to finish: his own life. Every morning, Daniel left early, promising himself that someday things would be different. Someday he would repair his house. Someday he would come home earlier. Someday he would sit with his family without thinking about another job. But somehow, someday remained ahead. One evening, after finishing another house for a client, Daniel returned home exhausted. His tools were scattered across an unfinished room. Repairs he had promised months ago were still waiting. His family had stopped expecting him early. Standing there, Daniel felt an uncomfortable truth. He had spent years building homes for everyone else while neglecting the life he was supposed to build for himself. He knew how to build walls, roofs, and foundations, but he was about to discover that the hardest thing to build was a life worth coming home to. Daniel wasn't lazy. In fact, people who knew him would have called him the hardest worker in town. He woke before sunrise, packed his tools, and left home while the streets were still quiet. By the time families began their day, Daniel had finished hours of work. He accepted extra projects, helped other workers, and rarely said no when someone needed him. His belief was simple: if I work hard enough today, tomorrow will be easier. But tomorrow never seemed to arrive. There was always another house to finish, another customer to satisfy, another payment to earn. Daniel kept postponing dinner with his wife. He told himself he would repair the unfinished home after the next project. He would rest after the busy season. He would visit his parents when work slowed down. Even his personal goals were pushed into the future. Whenever his family asked him to slow down, Daniel gave the answer: "Just let me finish this project first." Then another project came, another customer, another payment, another reason to delay his own life. Daniel believed he was doing all of this for his family. Every extra hour seemed like another brick toward their security. But he didn't notice that while he was building financial stability, he was losing something he could never earn back: moments with the people he loved. His son was growing older. Daniel noticed it only in pieces: the changing voice, the taller body, the interests he no longer understood. One evening, his son looked at the unfinished house and asked, "Dad, when will you have time to build our house?" Daniel laughed, trying to make the question feel small. "Soon," he promised. But after his son walked away, that word followed Daniel through the night. He knew he had been saying it for years. The next project Daniel accepted was different from the others. The client was an elderly man named Samuel, who seemed less interested in finishing quickly than in making sure everything was built properly. He chose each piece of wood carefully, inspected every corner, and often reminded Daniel that rushing a foundation could create problems no one would see until years later. One afternoon, while they were working, Samuel said quietly, "A house isn't built only from what you add. It's also built from what you refuse to neglect." Daniel paused, but he didn't completely understand. During their breaks, Samuel began asking about Daniel's life. Daniel proudly described the houses he had built, the money he had earned, the tools he had collected, and the reputation he had established. Samuel listened patiently. Then he asked, "And what have you built for yourself?" Daniel hesitated. He mentioned his unfinished house, his long hours, and the plans he kept postponing. Samuel looked at him and said, "I'm not asking what you've earned. I'm asking what you've built." The question stayed with Daniel. For years, he had measured his life by output: how many houses he completed, how much money he earned, how many customers he satisfied. But standing inside Samuel's unfinished walls, he suddenly saw his own life differently. Every foundation had a purpose, every room was designed for something, and every neglected part eventually created problems. Samuel looked around and said, "People think a house becomes a home when construction ends. Sometimes the real work begins after the walls are finished." Daniel thought about his family waiting at home. For the first time, he wondered whether he had been building everything except the life he actually wanted to live. For the first time, Daniel decided to examine his own life with the same attention he gave to a customer's house. One evening, he took a sheet of paper and wrote down everything that filled his days. The list was longer than he expected: other people's projects, extra work, money worries, complaints about being tired, hours spent recovering from exhaustion, difficult conversations he kept avoiding, and again, promises that he would spend time with his family later. When Daniel looked at the page, something uncomfortable became clear. He didn't necessarily have no time. He had been giving nearly all of his time to things that felt urgent while neglecting the things that were important. Then came the moment that finally broke through his excuses. His son had an important school event. Daniel had promised he would be there. But that afternoon, a customer offered him extra work. Daniel accepted it, telling himself that missing one event wouldn't matter. When he finally returned home, he expected disappointment, maybe even anger. Instead, his son simply looked at him and said, "It's okay, Dad. I knew you were busy." Those words hurt more than anger could have. Daniel stood silently, realizing his family had stopped expecting him to choose them because they already knew what answer he would give. That night he walked through his unfinished home. He noticed the broken door he had promised to repair, the unfinished room, and the tools lying untouched in the corner. And suddenly, the metaphor became impossible to ignore. His house looked unfinished because, in some ways, his life did too. He had spent years adding more work, more money, and more responsibility, yet he had neglected the foundation that made those things meaningful. Daniel sat down and asked himself a question he had never considered. What am I building all of this for if I'm never present to live in it? For the first time, he wasn't thinking about the next customer or the next paycheck. He was thinking about the life that was quietly passing while he was busy building someone else's. Daniel met Samuel the next morning and finally admitted what he had been afraid to say. He felt trapped. If he worked less, he worried about money. If he worked more, he lost more time with his family. Every choice seemed to demand a sacrifice. Samuel listened without interrupting. Then he asked, "What are you actually trying to build?" Daniel thought for a moment before answering, "A better life." Samuel nodded, then quietly asked, "Then why are you building everything except the life itself?" Daniel had no answer. Samuel picked up a piece of wood and explained that every strong house begins with a foundation. Nobody walks onto a construction site and admires the concrete buried underground. It isn't beautiful. It isn't impressive. Most people never even see it. Yet without it, everything above it eventually becomes unstable. "Your life is the same," Samuel said. Daniel had spent years chasing things everyone could see: money, completed projects, satisfied customers, and a respected reputation. But he had neglected the things that quietly supported all of them: his health, his family, his character, his relationships, his skills, and his peace of mind. Samuel looked directly at him. "Don't build a bigger life before you build a stronger foundation." The words stayed with Daniel. He didn't quit his work. He didn't suddenly become a different person. Instead, he began making smaller, harder choices. He refused unnecessary projects. He protected time for his family. He started repairing his own house, one neglected piece at a time. The first room took weeks to finish because he still had responsibilities and doubts. But every completed repair felt different from the houses he had built for customers. This time, he wasn't simply producing something. He was creating a place where his own life could grow. And slowly, Daniel understood that working hard wasn't the problem. He had simply been building in the wrong direction. Daniel had spent years believing that sacrifice was the price of a better life. But now, for the first time, he began to question what kind of life he was actually paying for. The changes were uncomfortable at first. He earned a little less because he stopped accepting every project that came his way. Some evenings, when he returned home earlier than usual, a voice inside him warned that he was being irresponsible. What if another carpenter took the work? What if his income fell? What if all those years of working harder had been necessary after all? But then he would look at his son sitting at the table, or hear his wife telling a simple story about her day, and realize something he had forgotten. Being present was not wasted time. Slowly, dinner became something they shared again. Daniel repaired the broken door of his own house. Then he finished the room he had postponed for years. His son began asking him questions again, not because Daniel had suddenly become a different father, but because he was finally there to hear them. Months later, when the room was finished, Daniel stood quietly inside it. The walls were simple. The repairs weren't perfect, yet he felt proud. Not because the room was beautiful, but because it represented a decision. For years he had said, "I'll do it someday." Now he was saying, "I'll build it today." When Daniel returned to Samuel, he thanked him for helping him see what he had been missing. Samuel smiled. "A house can be rebuilt," he said. "A career can change. Money can be earned again, but some moments don't come back." Daniel finally understood. His greatest mistake had never been working hard. Hard work had given him skill, dignity, and a livelihood. The mistake was allowing hard work to become an excuse for postponing life. The old Daniel built everything for tomorrow. The new Daniel learned to build for today and tomorrow together. And when he looked at his finished home, he realized the greatest thing he had ever built wasn't a house. It was a life he was finally present enough to enjoy. Daniel's story was never really about carpentry. It was about a question many of us avoid because answering it honestly can be uncomfortable. What are you building with the time you have? Maybe you are working constantly, but your health keeps getting pushed aside. Maybe you are chasing money while losing connection with the people you love. Maybe you are trying to build a career but postponing the skills that would make it possible. Or maybe you keep telling yourself that someday, when life becomes easier, you will finally begin the thing that matters. Being busy does not automatically mean you are building something valuable. So ask yourself, what kind of person am I becoming? What kind of life am I trying to create? And when I finally reach my goals, who do I want beside me? If you are learning English, don't simply say, "I want better English." Give that goal a structure. Read 1 page, learn 5 words, listen for 10 minutes, speak for 5 minutes, write 5 sentences. Your goals deserve more than whatever time happens to remain after everything else has been handled. If something matters, it needs a place in your day, not merely a place in your imagination. And this leads to another lesson. Build the foundation before chasing the result. Health is a foundation. Discipline is a foundation. Skills are a foundation. Relationships, financial habits, and character are foundations too. So the question is not only, how much have I built? It is also, can the life I'm building actually support me? And perhaps the most dangerous phrase is the one Daniel used for years: someday. But tomorrow only becomes useful when it follows an action taken today. If you want to learn English, practice today. If you want to exercise, start today. If you want to build a business, learn one useful skill today. If you want more time with your family, create that time today. You don't need to rebuild your entire life overnight. You simply need to place the first brick. For the next 7 days, try something simple. Write down one thing you genuinely want to build. Identify one small action that supports it and give that action 25 focused minutes each day. Remove one unnecessary activity that steals your attention. Spend intentional time with someone who matters. Then before you sleep, ask yourself, what did I build today? Think about Daniel again. He spent years constructing homes for other people while telling himself that his own life could wait. Eventually, he discovered that life does not pause while you work toward the future. The days you spend building tomorrow are also becoming your life today. So don't spend your entire life building a future that you never stop to live. Your life is being built quietly, one decision, one habit, 1 hour, and one ordinary day at a time. The question is whether you are building it intentionally. So ask yourself tonight, what is one thing you want to start building in your life today? Build the foundation, protect what matters, and remember, one day you will have to live inside the life you're building now. That does not mean abandoning work or responsibility. It means understanding that responsibility includes caring for the person, relationships, and future that your work is supposed to support. A foundation is rarely built in one dramatic moment. It is built through ordinary choices repeated when nobody is watching. The same is true of a meaningful life. And if you fail for a day, return the next day. A missed day is not a ruined life. What matters is whether you keep postponing the return again today.